A Reuters Ipsos poll completed on Wednesday found that a majority of Americans, 57%, believe that President Donald Trump has been erratic in his economic policies in his first weeks in office. That comes at a time that Trump has started trade wars with some of the nation's largest trading partners, including Canada, Mexico, and China. And that trade war and the on-again, off-again nature of it has contributed to significant sell-offs in stocks in the United States and other parts of the world. It's also important to note that the poll found that Americans' top concern, the thing that they really want Trump to be tackling, is inflation and the cost of living. 6 out of 10 respondents cited that as their top goal for him. That's substantially more than cited other Trump priorities, both expressed during his first weeks in office and on the campaign trail, including cutting the size of government, including addressing immigration, fighting crime. And it's also important to note that 7 out of 10 respondents to the poll said they believe that tariffs would push the cost of groceries and other everyday items higher. That's particularly significant because it suggests that members of the public may be concerned that Trump's actually contributing to a problem they expect him to fight.
Porsche warned there could be a bumpy ride ahead this year. Investors were spooked and shares dropped 4% after the luxury car maker said Wednesday a lot of factors could hit earnings. It cited its large-scale restructure, trade tensions and growing competition in China. And that's even before the possibility of higher US tariffs on EU imports. Porsche shares dropped sharply last month when it warned it would take a financial hit. It said this was due to a near $873 million spend on new internal combustion engine and hybrid models. Porsche is currently pursuing a cost-cutting drive as it shrinks its workforce by just under 4,000 jobs and it plans further cuts. Sales dropped 3% last year and it expects even lower numbers this year. There's also the spectre of new tariffs President Donald Trump may impose on car imports from Europe. Such a move could hurt Porsche's sales in its biggest single-country market. Its CFO said Wednesday they will assess the option of passing on some costs to consumers. They added they hoped a sensible tariff regime will prevail. Porsche originally debuted on the stock market 3 years ago, valued higher than parent company Volkswagen, but it's struggled to keep the pace since. Low sales in China haven't helped, with a drop of 28% last year, and it's also seen tepid electric vehicle demand. But Porsche will keep its dividend for 2024 at the previous year's level.
Russia has given the US a list of demands for a deal to end its war against Ukraine and reset relations with Washington. That's according to 2 people familiar with the matter Wednesday, though specifics were unclear. It comes after Washington had proposed a deal for a 30-day truce to break up the conflict between Kiev and Moscow that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine in early 2022. The sources said Russian and American officials discussed the terms in detail for the past 3 weeks. They described the Kremlin's terms as broad and similar to demands Russia previously presented to Ukraine, the US, and NATO. Those earlier terms include no NATO membership for Kiev, no deployment of foreign troops in Ukraine, and international recognition that Crimea and 4 provinces belong to Russia. On Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he would agree to a 30-day truce as a first step toward peace talks, while Russian President Vladimir Putin's commitment to such a potential deal is still uncertain. The Trump administration has not explained how it is approaching its negotiations with Moscow. The 2 sides are engaged in 2 separate conversations, one on resetting US-Russia relations and the other on a Ukraine peace agreement. The administration appears to be divided on how to proceed. This all comes as Russia's defense ministry claims to have retaken territory held by Ukraine troops in Kursk in western Russia. Ukraine says its soldiers will keep operating in Kursk as long as needed and says its troops are fighting in and around the major town of Sudzha.
Could genetically modified mosquitoes stop the spread of malaria, one of the world's deadliest diseases? That's what this team of scientists at Imperial College in London is currently investigating.
The programme is set to genetically engineer mosquitoes to make them unable to transmit malaria.
To develop malaria-resistant mosquitoes, the Transmission Zero team used a genetic engineering technique called gene drive technology. Professor George Christophidis leads the research at Imperial College.
What we have done here is to make the mosquitoes not being infected with malaria. So they cannot be infected with malaria, they cannot transmit malaria.
He says the project works in 2 stages. The first stage makes mosquitoes unable to transmit the malaria parasite, and the second ensures that future generations inherit that resistance.
So you engineer mosquitoes in the lab, you make them genetically modified in the lab, you have a population of mosquitoes, you release them in the field, they will be able to mate with the wild population, with the wild mosquitoes, and when they mate, all their progeny will become resistant as well.
The advantage of this self-spreading solution is that it could remove the need for more expensive interventions, and it could also reach parasite-carrying mosquitoes in areas humans can't easily access. The fight against the disease has stalled in recent years. Traditional methods are becoming ineffective because researchers say mosquitoes and malaria parasites are increasingly resistant to current treatments and control strategies.
We need a new technology, we need new ideas, we need something that will not need us to be there all the time and do the job. Something that will propagate itself, a sustainable technology.
Malaria kills around 600,000 people every year. Of these, 90% are children under 5, and 90% live in Africa.
Malaria is the single biggest killer of human beings in the history of humanity.
Working with partners in Tanzania and Switzerland, the team hopes to conduct field trials within the next few years.
And that we can make a call in.
2 U.S. astronauts who have been stuck in space for 9 months will have to wait at least a few days longer to return home, after SpaceX on Wednesday scrubbed the launch of a rocket carrying a crew that was meant to replace them, called the Crew 10. NASA was set to launch a SpaceX rocket from Florida to relieve Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams from the International Space Station, but the agency said the launch was called off due to a hydraulic system issue with a ground support clamp arm for the rocket. The astronaut pair has been stuck on the ISS for the past 9 months after NASA deemed that it was too risky for them to fly home on the Boeing Starliner craft they arrived on, which suffered propulsion system issues in space. NASA says Wilmore and Williams cannot leave until the new crew arrives in order to keep the ISS staffed with enough U.S. astronauts for maintenance. The Crew 10 flight would normally be considered a routine astronaut rotation. Instead, it has become politicized, as U.S. President Donald Trump and his advisor Elon Musk have, without evidence, blamed former President Joe Biden for the fiasco. NASA had moved the mission up 2 weeks earlier than planned under pressure from Trump and Musk, the CEO of SpaceX. NASA swapped a delayed SpaceX capsule with a different one that would be ready sooner. The agency now says that the next potential launch opportunity is no earlier than Friday evening, which would put Wilmore and Williams on track for a March 19th departure from the space station.